It's Monday night, and we're sharpening our takes. You're tuned into The Cut, hosted by Thomas Roth.
Hey everybody, welcome to a newest edition of The Cut. It's a beautiful end of October evening, and I'm Thomas Roth. I'm here to give you the real takes that we're all craving. From takes on everything on politics and current events to conspiracy theories, entertainment, and pop culture, our goal is simple: to keep you informed and entertained while building a mutual trust through an honest and no-nonsense conversation. So, I have been hinting for a month now that we were going to get someone on here that could end our spooky season month and bring it out with a bang. And I think we found that because we have a show tonight that's going to introduce you guys to the world of ghost hunting and people who are intimately familiar with it. I promised it a little while ago, as I said, and I'm really excited because I'm here to announce that we have our resident ghost hunter of Northeast Ohio named Miss Denise Smith. So Denise, thank you for coming on our show tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
And we're gonna have some fun. We're gonna get into the ghost hunting. I want to hear all about it. I want to hear your experiences with the paranormal. They want to hear your experiences with the paranormal. But before we do that, I gotta give a shout out to our sponsor, Cracked. And if you guys don't know what Cracked is your one-stop shop for all things electronics repair. I bet you're watching this on a cracked screen
First
now,
on the syllabus,
or your battery's
be
about
skeptical.
to die. But
Not
don't
every
worry,
strange sound
you
or
take it
bump
to
in the
Cracked,
night
where
is a
they can get
ghost.
your screen uncracked and give your device
It might be the
more
wind
life.
outside, it might be
Give
traffic.
Cracked a call at
You may have had a burst of energy going through the house electrically. And
or
that's
go to
one reason why we turn off all the
crackedrepair.com
lights.
to get a quote. Cracked.
So you try to
Get
rule
your
out
fix.
everything that.
So before we start this out tonight, guys, I want you to like and comment on the video. I want you to subscribe to the channel and give us a share so we can keep putting out good content. We can get more great people like Denise in here to get their stories out. So first, before we get into anything, I want to introduce ghost hunting because maybe you guys aren't intimately familiar with it. Maybe you've just heard, people go out and they try to talk to spirits and they try to talk to their dead relative. But there's more to it than that. There's a whole world out there, a whole society that is predicated on investigating the unknown and bringing to light these stories and making maybe unheard stories heard, right? People who didn't get a chance to tell their story in life may have unfortunately passed away, and now these people can help that happen. So, I want to know, if you want to know what ghost hunting is, we got a nice little video here. It's a little YouTube short. So Anthony, if you can pull that up for us, we're going to put it on the screen there.
These recordings from a recent ghost hunt at the Mardi Gras costume shop in Phoenix, Arizona, may be evidence that ghosts do exist.
Is there anybody here with us right now?
But to actually prove this, Rob Kohler of the Phoenix, Arizona Paranormal Society is schooling us on the basics of ghost hunting. First on the syllabus, be skeptical. Not every strange sound or bump in the night is a ghost.
It might be the wind outside, it might be traffic. You may have had a burst of energy going through the house electrically. And that's one reason why we turn off all the lights.
I didn't hear it. So you try to rule out everything that it isn't to try and figure out what it could be.
Exactly. We typically are skeptical to start off and try to debunk everything. And that's where the equipment comes into play. Hello?
And that essential ghost hunting equipment is number 2 on our list.
You always want to have a K2 meter. Now this is what picks up the electromagnetic fields. It lights up and it makes noises. It's kind of like an alarm.
Also known as EMF, ghost hunters believe changes in the magnetic field mean.
All right, so we got a nice little overview there of some of the things that ghost hunters use. Denise, I want to talk to you here because we see these things on TV. We see Zach Baggins, we see the Ghost Adventures
Sore subject,
guys.
but yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
We see these things, and I'm not going to lie to you. I think sometimes people like that on television sensationalize it,
100%,
right?
100%. At the end of the day, when you're doing a show, it's for entertainment. They have to appease the sponsors. They have to appease the channels. You're not going to do that by doing an actual ghost hunt where you're pretty much sitting in the dark quietly 90% of the time. Nobody wants to watch that on TV. So it's understandable. And I think anybody who does it understands that, and they watch it for entertainment, but that's pretty much it. You don't watch it to learn how to do, how to do it. You just watch it to have a good time and spend a half hour.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Some of my fondest memories, like my senior year in high school, or when I discovered Ghost Adventures, the TV show Taps and everything.
Yeah.
And it was fun, but you kind of knew that it was, hey, there's no way that these guys go in every week and they find something.
Right.
And so,
well, at the end of the day too, these shows come in, like we had one of the shows come into Madison Seminary, and it was like, they're there for 5 days and they're doing interviews, they're doing B-roll, they're doing history, they're doing all this stuff. And they're taking all of that and they're taking 5 days of it and putting it into 46 minutes for television, because you have commercial breaks and whatever. And then, with all of the other things, their investigation is maybe 6 to 10 minutes of the show, know? So yeah, you might be able to take 5 days of investigation and make it a very exciting 6 minutes. But if you were to just play it out like live, that's not at all what it is. That's not, I wish it was that exciting every time, but the fact is it's not.
So you gave us a little here, like you gave us a really good breakdown there. And for you guys that don't know, as I introduced Denise, she is a volunteer at the Madison Seminary, which is purported to be one of the most haunted places in this area.
It is.
And Denise, before we go further, I want people to know who you are. I want them to know where you're from, what you do in your 9 to 5 or 8 to 4, whatever schedule you work. And I want to know how you got involved in the paranormal. So could you give us who is Denise Smith? And Denise, could you break it down for us?
Sure.
Please? Thank you.
I actually have, I love the paranormal because it brings together all types of people. You'll have doctors, you'll have whatever. I actually am a real estate agent in my 9 to 5. I don't really have business hours, but I am a real estate agent. I am a director on the board of directors for Ashtabula County Realtors. I am the president of a nonprofit that helps Madison businesses grow. I volunteer at Madison Seminary. I am a mom. I have 3 boys, and I live in Madison.
That's awesome. So you're local to the area.
Yeah.
You kept the paranormal investigating closer to home with Madison Seminary.
I never wanted to do
that was my next question. How'd you get involved?
I didn't. I think the universe just decided this girl is going to do this, because the way everything worked out, I just kind of fell into it, and I fell hard. My husband and I went to Madison Seminary for a flashlight tour. We even went during the day while it was still light out, because I was scared. And it just so happened that all of my kids were in various places, and we had a day where we could do something. So we went to Madison Seminary. We did a flashlight tour, and about 20 minutes into my hour-long tour, I was like, I love this building. I love the history of it. I love what they're doing with it. I have to be part of this. And we finished our tour, and I went to leave, and I didn't even consult my husband. I turned around and I told the owner, do you take volunteers? Because I have to work here. I have to. Not like it'd be super cool or I would love it. I said, I have to work here. And he was kind of taken aback, and he's like, sure, come next week, And here we are almost 7 years later. Now I have a paranormal podcast. I get invited to be part of events, all over the place. I travel to other states and go do investigations, and I really jumped into it. I didn't play. I still get very scared doing investigations. I'm a chicken shit. I get scared. I came for the history, and you can't be part of that building without experiencing paranormal. So I just kind of got sucked into it.
That's awesome. So I had been talking to you for a couple weeks now.
Mm-hmm.
And you had indicated to me that when you were younger, you said like you maybe like heard a couple things or saw a couple things.
I saw a lot of things. Yeah.
So do you feel comfortable maybe talking about that a little bit?
Yeah. I grew up in a family that was very like open about that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Family events, we would have like psychic parties, and we would bring a psychic in, and they would take us all individually and do readings. And my mom would do seances and use the Ouija board and all kinds of stuff. And I used to see things all the time. There was one night where I was laying in bed, and there was an African-American man and his daughter and son standing next to him. And I'm like, Mom, who's here? And she's like, nobody's here. It's your eyes playing tricks on you. And I just constantly was like seeing things like that and experiencing things, but you convince yourself that it's not real, well, maybe I'm just tired. Maybe it's this, maybe it's that. So I kind of like shut it off essentially until I came back to the seminary. It came to the seminary, and then it's like, you can't ignore it anymore. Yeah. You could go on a Tuesday afternoon and weird stuff happens. So I couldn't really get around it anymore. But yeah, I would say most of my life, like up until I was probably like in my teens, I was seeing things.
And did you ever feel like threatened, or was it more just like they were there?
Only one time did
Okay.
I feel threatened. Most of the time it was just weird, even when you see things often, it's still alarming.
Sure. Yeah.
But no, not super threatening.
Okay. So you said that like your family would have like the psychic parties, and you guys were very open about it.
Yeah.
Now you have 3 children of your own.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do any of them show a propensity for something like that?
All of my kids have seen something in my house. My youngest seems to have more of a connection to that kind of thing. And I try to not say anything either way, if that makes sense.
Sure.
I don't want to scare them and be like, oh my gosh, what do you think it was? We need to sage the house. I try not to do that. But I also try not to ever say, well, maybe it's your eyes playing tricks on you, or, discredit them either, because I know what it's like to have those experiences and to have them like brushed aside, or I don't want to ever make them feel like they're crazy.
Sure.
So I kind of just pull a psychologist and say, well, how does that make you feel?
Yeah.
And, and just deal with it that way. Is it right? I don't know, but it's what I do with them.
Well, I think that I don't think that there's really like a manual
Right.
on how to deal with something, right? I think that
Yeah, that's very true.
I read something one time where children are able to see things a little
Yes.
bit more because they haven't been desensitized, right?
Right.
So, I almost think I almost feel like desensitizing a child and telling them that these things aren't real, this, that, and the other thing, is really doing a disservice, because if they're able to see these
Right.
things, and
it doesn't scare them.
and exactly,
Yeah.
it doesn't scare them. So, hey, maybe, like I had indicated earlier in the podcast, maybe someone didn't have a voice when they were alive,
Right.
but now that they passed on,
Right.
maybe they need to tell a story.
Yeah.
Right.
For sure. That's why I'm a tour guide at the seminary.
Sure.
I feel like their stories should be told.
Now, the seminary was a place for women, correct?
Yeah, it wore a lot of hats over the years.
Okay.
It was built in 1847, so as you can imagine, it's changed hands a lot of times, but the majority of the time it was essentially like a nursing home. They took care of women who were displaced by the Civil War initially,
Okay.
when it used to be a school first.
Okay.
And then it was Civil War widows, and then just kind of expanded.
Okay. So it expands, and paranormal activity starts to get reported over time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then how did the ghost hunting aspect of Madison Seminary come about? Like when did tours and everything start to come?
So the police department ran the building in the 80s and 90s, and they I talked to a retired police officer who wanted to remain anonymous. He didn't want anybody to know he was talking to us, but he told us that stuff would happen there all the time. The county sold the building, and when they sold it, they put in their article that it may be haunted. And this
Okay.
was like in 1992. I want to say, I'm really bad with dates. But the people that bought it actually ran a nursery out of there, like for plants, not for
Okay.
babies.
Okay.
And, because there was acreage with it, whatever, they just used it basically for shipping and receiving.
Okay.
But they, as a side hustle, they had a giant piece of plywood in the front yard that said ghost hunts, and it had a phone number to call. And so people could rent the building. And the current owner was actually one of those people that rented the building. He came and did an investigation. And then like 2 years later, he came back to do another one, and he had saw just how much the building was starting to decay. They weren't using it for anything really. So, like the basement flooded, and instead of like taking care of it, they just closed the door and
Oh, wow.
didn't let anybody down there. So he was like, he felt like personally attacked by this. Like, why are you letting this building, fall apart? And so he ended up, the guy comes at 4 a.m. to collect the money, and he says, what would it take to buy this place? And the negotiations started, and like 6 months later, he owned the building.
That's awesome.
And he is an investigator. He has a YouTube channel. That's what he does. So when he took over the building, he wanted to make it affordable and great for teams, because he knows what it's like to be a team going into a building. So he made it, easy to afford. He made it very accommodating. And it's just grown into something super amazing. People travel from all over the place to come and visit it. And it's good too for the local economy. People are staying at Airbnbs, they're getting food, all kinds of stuff. So when he first opened, there was a lot of pushback from the community. Like,
Okay.
when you say, we're going to open this and we're going to do paranormal investigations, people think you're crazy, and they think it's stupid, and they think you're going to bring in riffraff and whatever. But it's been great. The community's really come around, and we do trick-or-treating for the kids, and this year we're doing a carnival for Halloween.
Oh,
and
that's cool.
So it's really changed over the years.
That's awesome. So we got a little bit of a history there on the Madison Seminary, but I want to give you guys really quick a little bit of a history lesson on ghost hunting. So before we start getting into a little bit more with Denise and start doing some questions here in classic The Cut style, I'm going to give you guys a little history on this and kind of show how far back ghost hunting goes. So, beliefs in spirits in the afterlife date back thousands of years. Ancient civilizations like the Egyptians and Greeks had rituals to honor the dead and communicate with spirits, and ghostly encounters were often attributed to religious phenomena, with ghosts viewed as souls in purgatory or spirits seeking vengeance. And so the modern concept of ghost hunting began to take shape with the rise of spiritualism in the mid-1800s. And the Fox sisters in 1848 became famous for communicating with spirits, which popularized the idea of contacting the dead. And who the fuck are the Fox sisters? The Fox sisters, I'm glad you asked that. The Fox sisters were born in the early 1800s in Hydesville, New York. So just a hop, skip, and a jump here from Ashtabula. Their family lived in a farmhouse that became the center of some mysterious happenings. And in 1848, the sisters began to hear some unexplained knocking sounds in their home. They claim that these noises were responses to questions with the pattern of knocks indicating yes or no. So, encouraged by their mother, the sisters began to perform some public demonstrations of their ability to communicate with spirits. They would ask the spirit the question, and the knocking would respond. And encouraged by their mother, they would. Wow, I double wrote that. So, scratch that. So after they were encouraged by their mother, they would communicate with the spirits and they'd ask the spirit questions and the knocking would respond. And they became symbols of the spiritualist movement, which emphasized the belief that the living could communicate with the spirits of the deceased. And their influence spurred the formation of spiritualist churches and groups across the United States over the years. And subsequently, over the years, the sisters would face skepticism and accusations of fraud. So 40 years later, in 1888, Margaret Fox admitting to using tricks to create the knocking sounds, although she later recanted and asserting the authenticity of the experiences. So, she says, hey, we did some tricks, but then later she's like, no, that was real. So despite the controversy, the Fox sisters are created with laying the groundwork for modern spiritualism. Their influence is still felt in contemporary ghost hunting and paranormal investigation practices. So one of the first organized ghost hunts is often credited with the Society for Physical Research, or the SPR, in the late 1800s. And these guys conducted scientific investigations into paranormal phenomena. So the SPR was established by a group of intellectuals, including notable figures like philosopher Henry Sidgwick, who aimed to investigate reports of supernatural occurrences using scientific methods. The organization sought to explore topics such as apparitions, mediumship, and other phenomena associated with spiritualism, with the goal of separating genuine experiences from fraud or delusion. Sound familiar?
Still pretty much the same
Still
thing.
pretty much the same, right?
Yeah.
So unlike earlier approaches that were primarily anecdotal, the SPR emphasized empirical research. So the members conducted investigations, collected testimonies, and gathered data to analyze the validity of these paranormal claims. And the SPR conducted numerous case studies examining ghost sightings, medium demonstrations, and other paranormal activities. And then they documented these investigations in detailed reports. And one of their famous investigations involved studying the phenomenon of apparent apparitions, where individuals reported seeing deceased loved ones. So the SPR sought to understand the psychological and environmental factors influencing these experiences. And they also investigated various mediums, some of whom claimed to communicate with the dead. They aimed to discern whether these communications were authentic or based on trickery. And these guys really laid the groundwork for future paranormal studies and inspired similar organizations worldwide. Its approach combined a rigorous examination of evidence with an openness to the possibility of the paranormal. The findings and discussions initiated by the SPR contributed to the growing interest in spiritualism and ghost hunting during the late 19th and 20th centuries. So overall, the Society for Psychical Research marked a significant shift in how paranormal phenomena were approached, balancing skepticism with a genuine interest in exploring the mysteries of the paranormal. And its popular discussions about the paranormal today are really influenced by the groundwork that the SPR laid. So now we're going to watch a video here in a second before we get back with Denise. And I think that it can't be understated that the advent of technology in the late 20th century transformed ghost hunting. So equipment like EMF meters, digital voice recorders, and thermal cameras became common tools for investigators. And the growth of reality shows, Ghost Hunters, and Ghost Adventures significantly popularized ghost hunting and led to increased public interest and participation. So, Anth, I don't think now, thinking about it, that we can watch this because it's on Travel Channel.
That's fine. That's fine.
That's a no.
I think that everybody has at least seen like previews for shows.
Give
and
me your
things
best
like
Zach
that.
Baggins impersonation.
No, because it would definitely be copyright.
That definitely would.
issues.
I mean,
Yeah.
that dude would come at us.
For sure, because it would be a great. Actually, fun fact:
Give me
I
a
do
fun fact.
not watch any of those shows.
Okay.
I do not.
So why don't you watch those shows?
If I'm being honest, it's because I don't like to be scared at home.
Okay.
I like to keep that separate, like that part of my life separate. I don't
Sure.
ever investigate at home. I don't watch scary movies. I don't.
You don't watch scary movies?
Aren't I the greatest paranormal investigator ever?
So
No, I told you I don't like to be scared.
so you're kind of like an MMA fighter. When you're at home, you're the gentle person
Yeah.
playing with your kids, having fun. But when you go to that gym,
Yeah, I'm different.
you're ready to fucking kill.
Different. Or
Built
yeah,
different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
that's-
I mean, I'll watch them. I have a lot of friends in the field now, obviously.
Yeah.
I'll watch if like one of my friends is going to be on, or
Sure.
if it's a location I've been to or something. Obviously if there's one on the seminary, I'll watch it. But in general, I don't watch them. First
Okay.
of all, I think, I lead paranormal investigations at the seminary, and one of the most frustrating parts is people will come in and they just have this wild expectation about what happens at an investigation. And so they'll get there and they'll be like, can you move this chair? Can you push that wheelchair? Can you close the door? Can you tap my shoulder? Can you do that? And it's like, calm down. That's
Yeah.
not how things work. So I do get a little frustrated with them. I do like ones where, like Ghost Brothers or Project Fear or,
Okay, yeah.
like where they're not sitting here going, I'm an expert in the paranormal field. First of all, because nobody's an expert. They're just there having a good time. They like
Yeah.
getting scared. They're, just hanging out, having a good time.
absolutely.
I like that.
There's an authenticity to it at that point, right?
Right, exactly.
And I feel like if you're gonna be ghost hunting and interacting with something that's beyond the spectrum of the living, there needs to be a certain type of reverence.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you're
I think-
dealing with forces that are beyond
Are
you.
unknown. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, if anybody tells you that they're an expert in the paranormal, then don't talk to them anymore. Because it's literally impossible to be an expert.
Yeah.
You could be an expert in like techniques. Sure.
Sure.
If you say like, I, am an expert in different ways of communicating. Sure. But nobody is an expert in the paranormal. Nobody knows the answers to anything. Nobody knows if that EMF reader is picking up your grandma or, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They don't know any of that. And I hate when people say, oh, I'm an expert.
It's the craziest thing because I read a really poignant quote the other day that death is the most permanent thing that there is. Like, and when we talk about dying and we talk about it's not just your physical body dies, right? Like you decay in the ground, but you're not really dead until someone speaks your name for the last time,
Yeah,
right?
that's such a good.
And I love that quote because it gives a voice to if now I don't know, right? I think I've seen a ghost, and when I was younger, so my parents have this 3-story home, right? They have a basement, first floor, second floor.
Okay.
The second floor is where my younger brother and I's room was.
Okay.
Like he had one room, I had another.
Yeah.
Right? And I remember being 4 years old, and I was really into The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And I watched it on TV, and ever since I had watched it on TV, it was like this wolf guy, right?
Yeah.
And he scared me. And I went into my bedroom to get something, and I remember turning around, and I don't remember what happened, but I was so fucking scared.
Yeah.
I was petrified, and it was midday.
Yeah.
I didn't go in my bedroom until I graduated college.
Oh my
I literally
gosh.
slept in our den.
Oh.
I made a bedroom in the den.
That
I
must have been
wouldn't go
terrifying.
in there, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I don't know what happened, and I would love to know what happened.
Yeah.
But when I got home from college, I said to myself, hey,
It's time.
It's time to go into the bedroom.
Yeah.
I'm a grown ass man.
Right.
I go in there and I'm unpacking my college stuff, right? My mom
Okay.
kept that room real nice for me.
Nice.
Bedroom, dresser, whatever.
Okay.
And I'm sitting there and I'm unpacking and I heard just like a tap.
Okay.
And I mean, I went cold. Like, cause I was like, fuck.
You're like, this is why I wasn't in here. This is why I left.
And I'll never I remember what I was wearing.
Yeah.
I remember everything. And I just said aloud, I was like, listen, I'm home now.
Yeah.
This is my room.
Yeah.
It was, if you're real, if you're here, you got to deal with it. We got to figure out how to live together.
Set
Because
some boundaries.
exactly. Yeah. I went and got a pizza, came home. I went in my room, turned on my PlayStation. It's like 8 at night at this point, right?
Yeah.
And I wasn't scared anymore. And nothing ever happened in that room again.
Nice. Yeah.
But my younger brother to this day tells me, because he lives at home with my parents, and he says, dude, like, I hear some shit up there, bro. Like,
Is he not up there anymore?
He's still there.
Oh.
My younger brother still lives at home, and he still says he hears some shit.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting to me because I never felt scared anymore in there. But when I was little, I felt so scared,
Yeah.
right? And I think that that's almost cool because when you can take ownership and show them like, hey, this is my territory.
Well,
you
it
might
doesn't
be
always
here.
work that way.
Indeed. And that's
Yeah.
what I want to get into
Yeah.
with in a minute. Like, I think I was fortunate.
Yeah.
If there is anything there. I think that whatever was there was like, hey,
Yeah.
he respected me.
Right.
I'm gonna
I mean, that's
back.
understandable. I feel like people forget that like spirits used to be people too.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And if I were to move into your house and say, this is mine now, you know what I mean? You're not going to be very respectful. But
No.
if I were like, hey, you know, circumstances are I have to move in here. You can't leave. We're just going to have to learn to get along.
Yeah.
Then yeah, you are probably going to get along. But
Yeah.
it definitely doesn't always work that way. When I bought my house,
I was hoping you'd have a
I do. It was terrifying.
I was hoping to lead into something.
And this
like
is
that.
why I don't investigate at home. So I moved into my house 13 years ago. So do the math. I've been at the seminary 7 years. So this was way before any of this. My son was 6 at the time.
Okay.
And he told me that he had seen a man who looked like a man but had horns like a goat. Okay, I didn't know this at the time, thank God, but that's really, really bad. And I didn't know what to do. I told you my family like did psychic parties and stuff. So I called one of the psychics that we used to have at parties. And I said, hey, this is what's going on. My son's seeing people all the time. He's getting really scared. You know, like weird stuff happens. Can you come out? And she said, it'll be $350. And I don't talk to this woman anymore. But I had just bought a house and I was in my 20s. Like I don't have $350. So she said, go to the dollar store, get one of those religious candles, light it and say, this is my house now. You need to leave. So I did that thinking I was listening to an expert. Yeah. And I did that and I started having like my kitchen cabinets would just open. When I went to the bathroom, I would come back and all of them would be open. And the one that really scared me was my light switch. It was a 3-way switch.
Okay.
And my light switch had got stuck halfway. And all of a sudden it started buzzing. Like it was like, bzzz, like the electricity was going through it at just the right way. And my lights were flickering. And I was like, okay, I will never do that again. I will never, ever do that again. So I just learned to live with it. And I just had a serious conversation with myself, who knows. And I just said like, hey, we bought this house and I intend to raise my family here and hopefully we can just get along. And things have been fine since then. I mean, all of my kids have seen the same thing, but we've never had any issues.
Any issues?
No.
Now, is there a certain time of the year that this presence make itself known?
No.
Okay.
No, it's funny because the owner of the seminary always says like, oh, it's October. It's when people realize that, or people remember that ghosts exist. It's all year round. There's no.
Yeah. I mean, I've kind of, I've always been a fan of spooky things my whole life, right? And scary movies. I mean, like,
I do not.
when I was 7, my dad had me watch The Hills Have Eyes with him.
Yeah.
Like, crazy shit, right? And I just remember, like, I was young. I was a 5th-year senior in college because I like to party. And my roommate and I got really into the show American Horror Story.
Yeah.
It had just come out. This was like the first year.
Yeah.
And we had a discussion. I remember him and I talking, and it was the episode centered around Halloween night.
Okay.
And how at that house, they're called the murder house or whatever, those spirits could leave the house and walk around and maybe visit a loved one, something. And so I always wondered, like, is he alluding to something in the real world where, like, during a certain time
I think
of year,
so. I mean, I think it's one of those things that, like, there's so many different cultures who have the same belief.
Mhm.
And I like to, when you look at like ancient cultures or ancient civilizations or whatever, you have to think these people didn't have TikTok. They didn't have the internet.
No.
They didn't have social media or regular media. They had nothing.
Nothing.
So when you have all these different cultures and people from all over the world who are saying the exact same thing without the ability to communicate with each other and say, hey, you should say that dead people can come walk the earth on Halloween, you know, I feel like there has to be some truth to it.
Sure.
And a lot of cultures do believe that. So it's possible.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
definitely possible. And it's something cool to think about. I mean, talking about the internet, I mean, the internet has fostered a vast network of horror fans,
For
paranormal
sure.
investigators, ghost hunters.
The internet has also ruined it, though, if I'm being honest.
So why don't you go into that for me?
Okay.
Why has the internet ruined ghost hunting?
Paranormal investigating is already like freaking weird, right? Like
Yes.
it's not something that you would want to like you're careful about who you tell that you do it. You know, it's not something that's like openly accepted by everyone. So when you have people who are going on to the internet and they're posting fake videos,
Okay.
or they're posting pictures of dust and saying that it's orbs, or, you know, they're posting all of these things that are like so ridiculous. Like if you zoom in super far and you squint your left eye and you turn your phone sideways, it looks like a face, you know, it just makes everyone look crazier. You know, I understand that we all come with a little level of crazy, but it just makes it worse. And
Yeah.
so when somebody does have actual evidence, you know, nobody looks at it as actual evidence. They're like, oh, okay, another fake video from the internet. So,
And it's not just that, I feel, Denise. I feel it's what people want is they want to see like fucking The Conjuring,
Yeah.
like with the hands,
Yeah.
like, you
because
know,
that's what we think it is.
but
Yeah.
it's not.
Right.
It's from what I understand in the research, because I've done research, because I wanted to come prepared with
Yeah.
you, right?
I appreciate it.
Evidence is maybe like a smear on like where a dusty window pane
Yeah.
was, and there's just like a smear that's the size of your fingernail.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that's evidence.
Yeah. And I know that this is going to seem so crazy to you guys, but I'm convinced that they are not allowed to let anyone film them. I know that sounds crazy. I understand
Who
that.
tells them that?
Okay, so you watched a lot of paranormal shows, and when you go to these locations, there's always an obligatory 7-foot tall shadow man, right?
Yes.
Every single episode says it. Every haunted location has it.
Yes.
Anywhere where people are using equipment, they always report a 7-foot tall shadow man.
Mhm.
I think that he's their babysitter. I am not anybody. I'm just saying that's what I think it is.
That's a good theory, though.
A lot of times when we're doing investigations, if you are asking questions like, who's your best friend? What do you want to eat for dinner? Who's the president? Whatever. Like, those questions are fine. But if you start asking them, can you travel through mirrors? Do you remember the names of your past lives? Like, anything that's like about how the afterlife works, you'll just hear a no or a shut up. And that's it. Like, you will get nothing for the rest of the night. Nothing. And we'll have teams come in and they got like, you know, the reaction camera here, and they got a camera on their head, and they got the chest camera, and they're holding their IR cameras and all this shit. And then they'll go in and they'll be like, man, it's really quiet. And I'm like, turn off your cameras. Like, just go and have a good time. Go for the personal experience, not the clout. And as soon as they go in there, they're like, oh man, it's crazy in there. It's the cameras. As soon as you turn them off, that's when more stuff starts happening.
Now, I want to piggyback on that.
Okay.
The internet, you said the internet ruined it, and it did, because everyone wants to capture it on social media.
Yes. Everybody's got a TikTok. Everybody's got a YouTube channel. It's everybody. Yep.
Do you feel that these ghosts, even though they're trapped in this world and maybe trapped in their time, they're cognizant of what's going on, and they know, like, hey, this isn't what I want. I just want to be left alone.
Yeah. I've kind of a wild take on this. I feel like the spirits are just like us. You know, like you can't just see spirits all the time, but that like Teresa Caputo lady or whatever her name is.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
She walks into a grocery store and sees that you have your grandma and your great uncle on your dad's side with you, and she has a message for you, right? So there's different levels for us. And I feel like the spirits are the same way. There's different levels. Sometimes you'll be doing an investigation and it seems like the two of them are just talking to each other and they don't care about you at all.
Yeah.
And you will get no responses from them. You will hear things, but it's them doing them. They don't, I don't know, maybe they don't see that we're there. They don't hear us. They don't see our equipment, whatever. And then there's ones who interact with us all the time. But I think that there's just different levels of it. I think that a lot of it is like the movie The Others. It's one of the only scary movies I've watched.
That's a throwback.
Yeah, she thinks that there's a ghost in the house, but really it's like the new owners. You know what I mean? Because she can't see them. The kid can see them, but she can't. So she just thinks that it's a ghost, but really it's, you know, new people.
New people.
Yeah. And so they're just living their life like normal. And then certain people can see that the new people and certain people can't. So I feel like it's a lot like that. Again, not an expert because there are no experts, but just,
I mean, there's credence to what you're saying,
that's
though.
what I feel. Yeah.
I mean, no one's an expert, but at the end of the day, if you do something enough, you get an idea.
Right.
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 And you can be intimately familiar without being like, oh, I'm the head honcho around here. And I feel like it almost takes a certain type of humbleness to be an investigator of the paranormal.
And humbleness is something that a lot of investigators don't have.
Why don't you think they have humbleness?
Because they're not doing it. Everybody's doing it for different reasons. But I feel like the people who are doing, you know, the shows and everything, they're just trying to get that excitement factor, that Zach Baggins factor.
Sure.
And I think that the humble people are the ones who get a lot of experiences.
Now, do you think it's because the those who have passed on and who are trapped here feel that genuine intent?
For
like,
sure.
hey, they want to know my story?
Absolutely. I feel like they know you before you even walk into the building. Because a lot of times, like, your name will get called or something. And I feel like I feel like there's some truth to auras. Mm-hmm. Like, we all just have this billboard of like, she's got a big heart. She's a boy mom, you know, whatever. Like, we just have this thing about us. And I think that I tell people all the time, Madison Seminary will give you what you put into it. If you walk in there puffing your chest and you're like, you ain't shit, you can't do anything, then you're going to get that pushback. But if you go in there like, hey, I heard about things that have happened in this building. I'm really sorry that happened to you. I'd like to talk about it. Then you'll have a good experience.
Yeah. Now, we talk about experiences, and you and I had talked about possibly going to the seminary.
Yeah.
And I'm going to admit to you right now into
They
the world.
were scared.
I was. And it was something that you had said to me, though. So I have at home, I have a little boy. He's 9 years old. He's disabled. So he can't walk, he can't talk.
Okay.
And I never want to bring something back that could harm him.
Yeah.
Right? That's do it like we talk about Zach Baggins.
Yeah.
Like, come into me. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I would just be so afraid that that entity would know my biggest fear is something happened in my little boy.
I mean, that's possible. Yeah.
So when we talk about these apparitions and these ghosts with evil intent, some of the from what I've read, some of these apparitions have been around for hundreds or thousands of years. Why do you feel they hold on to that hate and anger for so long?
I don't. You know how like.
I mean, I've been pissed at Anthony, but like, or
right, but you're not holding on to it.
Minutes.
Yeah. I think that we all just kind of like you see it in your infant. I'm sure you saw it in your son. I think that we all just inherently have these personalities, and it's not so much our meat suits or our bodies or this lifetime or whatever. I think it's just something that is part of your soul, and it's not, it's not going to go away. So somebody like who is a serial killer or, does something terrible in life, their soul is probably just garbage.
Sure.
And then when they pass on, they're just going to continue to be garbage human beings, but now they don't have a meat suit to go with it. So
they're even more angry because now they don't have that body and that meat suit to
they're just,
carry it out. So they're even more
and there's no
frustrated.
repercussions.
I mean, you can't arrest a ghost.
Right.
I mean, Ghostbusters aren't fucking real. You can't go over there with
So what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
I mean, you could sage or whatever, but I don't know. I kind of don't believe in all that stuff.
When a ghost, when you told me it's definitely possible for them to latch onto you, what do they do when they latch onto you?
It just depends. Like my co-host on my podcast, anytime he goes somewhere, he gets some old lady will attach herself and go home with him. And it's not anything like he worked in healthcare for a long time. He's a great guy. He has a great heart, and they will just come home with him, and they will just be known. Like his wife will see them, or something will fall off the counter and she'll be like, damn it, Michael, you brought somebody home with you again. I don't think that it's always, first of all, it's not always a demon. That's a huge thing for me, but it could be different reasons. Maybe they're sick of the questions that are asking, people are asking every day. Maybe they're sick of the location. Maybe they know you. People forget that like we all have an entourage of people that follow us around, right? Like your spirit guides, your guardian angels, whatever you want to call them. We all have an entourage that follows us around all the time. So maybe they just liked the people in your entourage and they're like, cool, I'll hang out with you guys for a while.
Cool. Okay.
I mean, everything doesn't have to be
not necessarily
negative.
malicious.
No. And even when you go to a place, say you go into a building and you walk into a certain room and all of a sudden you're having chest pains. Now, if I was Zach Baggins, I would say that's a demon possessing me and trying to kill me, right?
Yeah, because that's what he says.
Right. But at the end of the day, like, we don't know that.
Yeah.
It could just be, maybe it's somebody who died of a heart attack. Maybe it's a woman whose husband went to war and never came back and she died of a broken heart. You know what I mean? If you're not psychic, then you don't have the ability to listen to what they're saying or to see them. So that's their only way of communicating with you, is to make you feel certain things. I think the whole fact of like, everything is negative, everything's a demon, everything's malicious is so overplayed. And that's not at all how it is. Because if you look at human beings, if you have 100 human beings, 90 of them are going to be good people who are not going to hurt you. So it's the same thing when you go on these investigations. And that's something that people forget all the time. And that's another reason I don't like to watch the shows.
So you don't like watching those shows and you go on your investigations.
Yes.
Now, I have two questions for you in regard to that. So first part of the question is, what method do you use during your investigation to gather evidence of the paranormal activity? And have you ever captured anything that you believe is proof of the paranormal, and can you describe that to us?
Okay. For capturing, the answer is no.
Okay. That's fair.
Because I don't have a show. I don't have a YouTube channel. I do this because I like to see the buildings. I like to hear stories, and I like to hang out with the people that I go with.
Yeah.
So I have never brought a camera. I don't do recorders. So I don't have anything, just my personal experiences. And I'm okay with that. I'm not trying to prove to anyone that ghosts are real. Like, I know they're real, so I don't care if you if you believe in them or not.
Absolutely.
So I'm not trying to prove it to anybody. I don't know how much research you did, but my favorite thing to do on investigation is called the Estes method. I'm sure actually in that video that we watched briefly, there was a part where they were listening to what's called an SB7, and it goes like, it's like super annoying actually. But the theory is that the spirits can use the space in between the noise to communicate. And so you'll hear words in between all of that noise. And so with this Estes method, you put the headphones on. Okay, say you're listening to it. Okay. You have noise canceling headphones, and you're listening to that in your headphones. Your job when you're doing that is just word vomit. Whatever you hear, you're going to say it out loud. The beauty of it is you can't hear the questions that I'm asking, because if you're doing anything else, you're front loaded on the answer. Sure. So if I say, "What's your name?" we're all going to be listening for a name, right? But if you can't hear the questions and I say, "What's your name?" and then you go, "Thomas." Okay, that's pretty undeniable.
Yes.
And you have to like make sure that you're just saying literally whatever, because you might hear the word spaghetti and you're like, "That's dumb. We're doing a paranormal investigation. That's probably not right." But you don't know. I could have just asked like, "Hey, I'm getting ready to make dinner. What do you guys want?"
Yes,
So
absolutely.
I like it.
What do you got here? Anthony pulled up with the an example of the Estes method. Throw it up there real quick for her.
Well, we didn't even watch it. We don't know what she's going to say.
I'm going to teach you my favorite paranormal investigation technique, the Estes method, commonly referred to as sensory deprivation. You may have seen it on paranormal investigation shows like Kindred Spirits. First, you'll need a friend, a blindfold, noise-canceling headphones, and a spirit box. Next, have one person put on the blindfold to diminish visual stimuli as well as heighten their senses. They will listen to the spirit box through the headphones and repeat any communication that they hear. The other person will ask questions. Is there anyone here with us? Friend. With proper execution, there'll be no outside influence to the listener. The communication will be heard clearly without interpreting the response to the question. Who would be your Estes method partner? Let me know in the comments.
So it's literally what you just said, but seeing it like kind of like how it is, and putting like, hey, it's like a little box like this, right? It makes it more like accessible, and almost like, I hate saying this and I don't mean it in any certain way, but like when I would watch Ghost Adventures and they come in with like a fucking thing that's as big as this mat and they're like lugging it around, and I'm like, bro, there's no way that fucking that's an old Mac computer with a PlayStation on it, bro.
Yep.
So
it's nice too, because those things are not that expensive, like the SB7s. And probably you already have noise canceling headphones.
I do.
I'm a huge proponent for like things that aren't expensive. You know, I spend a lot of time like I have 3 kids. Okay. I have a house. Like, I don't have money to be blowing on paranormal investigation stuff. Like, but there are ways to do it without having a ton of money. And that's one of them. And I love it because it's hard to debunk, you know, like the K2s that they talk about all the time. Those are great, sure, but they're also made for electricians to search for electricity. So if I have it sitting on the table and you get a text message, then it's going to make it go off.
Sure.
Same thing with REM pods. If somebody within a mile is using a walkie-talkie, it'll make it go off.
Wow.
So there's a lot of things that can be debunked. So that's why I like that so much, because you didn't even hear the question. So if you're answering the question, it's pretty, I don't know, hard to argue.
Well, and the other thing that's cool about that is the no outside interference.
Yeah.
If you're doing it legitimately, you
Yeah.
have to say what's there. Like you said, if I hear spaghetti,
Right.
I don't know what the fucking question
Right.
is. The question could be, what was your favorite food?
Right. Exactly.
Before you died.
Yeah. And that's why I like it.
Now, I want to know, you've alluded to it
Okay.
over the show, but I want you to have the floor right now, and I want to give you a few minutes. How do you feel about the internet and ghost adventures and ghost hunters and all of that? Like, do you think that they accurately represent experiences, and do you think that there's any modicum of truth to what they do?
I think that it's a love-hate relationship.
Okay.
I
That's fair.
do love the fact that these shows are putting what we do into the limelight and they're making it a little bit more acceptable.
Okay.
So now when you tell people that you talk to ghosts in your free time, they're not like, what? That's crazy. They're like, oh, like they do on Ghost Hunters. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's nice that it kind of brings it to the forefront. Also there's, we interview people on our podcast all the time, and everybody seems to say that when they watched the original Ghost Hunters, that was like their first indication that like, hey, I can go to these places. Like, it's something that people have always wanted to do, but they didn't know that you could literally just call the place and book it and like pay your deposit and go. So that was nice. It really, makes it a little bit more normal. But I understand what they're doing. I do. I understand production. I understand that they need the views. I understand that they can't do anything if sponsors aren't willing to pay for their show. And in order to do that, you have to have a certain level of excitement.
Yeah.
I just wish that it was a little bit more honest. I wish that maybe there was a disclaimer that said like, hey, it's not always like this. Because I feel like, people might come to a location and they'll do an investigation and it's not like what they see on TV. And so they assume like, oh, this place isn't haunted, or whatever, this is dumb, whatever. But then, they'll say like, oh, it was a really slow night, nothing happened. And then they'll be telling you about like, oh, something pulled my hair and, whatever. And they'll tell you about all these experiences. And it's like, that was stuff that happened, but they want it to be so much bigger because of the shows. And I wish that there was a little more honesty about it. I'm not saying that they're not real. I'm just saying they're very exaggerated. Especially in terms of like I talked about how they'll be there for 5 days.
Yeah.
But then they put it into 6 minutes. They just wear the same clothes for 5 days in a row and then call it night 1 and night 2,
Yeah.
So I wish that there was just a little bit more honesty in that respect, but there's nothing I could do about it. So
no, but I mean, what you can do though is you can bring to light to people and set that expectation. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I try to explain it to people whenever they come to the seminary, because I help run the ghost hunts that we do there, and so I try to explain to people all the time, especially new people, like, this is not how it is. Yes, you'll have things happen, but it's not going to be every 4 seconds like it is on TV.
So before we start wrapping up tonight, I got 2 more questions I want to ask you. And this next question, you talked about leading investigations.
Yeah.
So in your time investigating, what have you encountered that you would describe as the definitive evidence that ghosts exist? And what was that experience like? Because, and I want to, you had talked to us about seeing things when you were younger, your son's seeing some things, and that's in the home, right?
Yeah.
But we're talking in Madison Seminary. We're talking, what was it that when you got there and you were in an investigation or leading that you saw that and you were like, oh shit, this is real.
I don't know that.
Or have you had that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I haven't because I just have always known.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? So
Sure.
it's not like there was a thing that at the seminary that happened and it was like, oh my gosh, ghosts are real. Like I had thought that my whole life. So there was never like, I don't know. There was never like a surprised moment. I've had a ton of things happen and heard some incredible stories that confirmed that I believe in ghosts. But
So what was the wildest story you ever heard?
oh gosh.
I mean, I'm talking like the wildest story, and you know it was true and wasn't embellished.
So actually, somebody told me at Regal Vineyards, which is in Geneva.
I know Regal Vineyards well.
Okay. So somebody told me that somebody was doing an investigation there, like way before these people owned it. And they were picking up on a spirit of a little boy. And he was telling them that he was in the wall. And they were like, I don't know who dug into the wall, but they found bones of a little boy in that wall. And like weird shit like that happens all the time. Like, how do you explain that? How do you explain like little kids having stories about when they were in World War II because they were reincarnated? You know what I mean? And they know their name, they know the plane they drove or flew, you know, things like that. There's paranormal is by definition not normal. So if something is like, you know, I put this here, I come back, it's in a different spot, or it's wet, or it's broken, or something, that's not normal.
Sure.
So it's by definition paranormal.
Absolutely.
I mean,
it's scary to think about because, like, so I moved into this new house and I have had nothing happen at this house.
Okay.
Right? Yet. Because something could happen.
Yeah.
You know, you never know.
Yeah.
But when I moved into the first house with my wife works night shift.
okay.
Okay. And I will never forget, she had went to work and at that time I had 2 dogs,
Okay.
not my third yet. And my biggest one, his name's Frank. He's a German Shepherd pit
Love
bull.
it.
He's the best dog in the world. I named it after Frank Reynolds from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Okay.
And I had this back room, and it was like my man cave, right? And it faced the backyard.
Okay.
And we lived in a nice neighborhood on the east side of Ashtabula. And I'm playing my video games, and Frank runs through the door. He had never done this before.
Okay.
And he starts barking. And I'm like, yo, Frank, shut the fuck up.
Right.
Come on.
Yeah.
I think I was actually on with Anthony playing Call of Duty. And Frank wouldn't fucking quit. So I said, okay, I'm getting off. Dog's being an ass. Maybe he has to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
So I go to unlock the door. And Frank backs away and starts whimpering. And the hair on the back of his neck is up. And
Oh,
he's
no.
prickly. And I'm like, what the fuck, dude? And I turn the light on in the back and I'm looking and I'm like, there's nothing here. And
Yeah.
I'm looking, I open the door and I'm like, what's going on? Nothing. And Frank, go to the fucking bathroom.
Yeah.
He won't go. So I said, well, fuck you. Then you're going to have to hold it till mom gets home in the morning.
Right.
Close the door, shut it. And Frank's still there. So I shut the blinds because I'm like, yeah, maybe he sees a reflection,
Right.
whatever. I get into bed. I'm laying in bed and Frank never came in the bedroom with me.
Okay.
He's in the bedroom. He's laying on the bed with me. And he's shivering.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, buddy, like, are you not feeling good? What's wrong?
Right.
I have my TV on in the bedroom. We're cool. I turn the TV off. And I go check on my little boy. He's in his bedroom. He's good. He's sleeping. And Frank's just next to me.
Huh.
I'm laying in my bed. I start to drift off. I'm on my side and I start drifting off, you know. And I hear it. Someone whispered in my ear, Tom, like that.
Mm-hmm.
I bolted up and Frank's looking at me. And I'm like, fuck this, dude.
Frank's like, dude, I've been trying to tell you.
Exactly. I go up because I thought someone was in my fucking house.
Right.
I'm checking the whole house. I got my golf club because I don't own a gun.
Yeah.
Got my medical marijuana holder. I can't own a gun.
Right.
I'm going around.
Plus,
the
what are you
house
going
with
to
the
do?
golf club.
Shoot a ghost?
Yeah, exactly. I go into my son's room. I get him. I bring him into the living room in the front, turn
Yeah.
on all the lights in the fucking house.
Yeah.
Both the dogs are there. We literally waited until morning for my wife to get there. And then like 3
I'm
weeks.
not laughing at you. I'm laughing with
That's
you.
fine.
Just so you know.
3 weeks later, someone broke into my truck and stole money and golf clubs out of my truck.
Yeah.
And then I told my wife it was a combination of it. I told her it was because someone broke into the truck. But in the back of my mind,
That was a half truth.
listen,
Yeah.
something fucked up happened there.
Yeah.
But here's the crazy thing, Denise. There was never anything that was moved. There was
Yeah.
never like, I never heard anything because we got a little nanny cam. I never
Yeah.
heard anyone talking to my little boy because I
Yeah.
look shit up like that. Like if something's there, you might hear them on the
For sure. Yeah.
nothing. And my little boy was never afraid to go into his room. Nothing.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be bad though. That's
But
what I'm
to
saying.
me,
Yeah. I mean,
it was
it scares the shit out of you.
But when I felt
Right.
it, I felt someone
And
was
the fact,
mad at me.
Yeah, and the fact that Frank was going crazy.
And
It's a
that was the
little scary.
wildest thing because my dog, I mean, Anthony's met my dogs. Like, Frank is probably the nicest one out of all of them.
Yeah.
He just wants to be pet.
Yeah.
He just wants to hug you. And I, from that moment on, I said, there's something in here that doesn't like me.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. You know, I don't do anything bad. Like,
Well, you didn't. Maybe.
maybe it was a man who owned the house prior. and
Right.
They just
Maybe it was
associated
somebody
me.
who looked like you. Maybe it was your soul in a past life. Like there's a million reasons a spirit could be mad at you.
It was, it made me really, when that happened, I started to look at more shit,
Yeah.
you know, like, because it wasn't, because I told a couple of my buddies and they're like, dude, you didn't hear shit.
Yeah,
They
right.
were like,
Yeah.
you were
Yep.
fading off to sleep and you were dreaming.
Right.
That's what happened. You were
Yeah.
dreaming. And I said, no, that's not what fucking happened,
Right.
dude. Because I know what was going on.
Yeah.
Like, so that was like my big experience. And that's kind of when I knew there's something beyond.
Right.
And it took me buying up my first fucking home to
And
know
then quickly selling it.
and quickly selling it. Because this happened in like September of that year.
Yeah.
We were out that bitch by fucking end of December.
So funny.
I mean, I ain't even joking.
Yeah.
Like, I just told my wife one day, hey, you want to go look at houses?
Right.
She was like, we just fucking bought this.
You're like, yeah, baby, I want to get you something.
Yeah.
It's all about you.
So I want to ask one final question before
Okay.
we end this tonight. And if there's one thing you could tell the spirits you've encountered, something they would truly understand or take to heart, what would it be and why?
Oh my gosh. That's a really tough question.
But it's a good question.
I don't know. I guess I do this for different reasons than other people, and it's probably something that's different than other people would say. But I don't know. I guess I just want them to understand that we're just like them, and there's good ones of us and there's bad ones of us, and at the end of the day, you don't have to talk to anybody. We do tell the spirits that at the seminary. I know that's kind of ass backwards from trying to make money, but
But no, it shows a respect to them.
yeah,
You're
I
on
mean,
their territory.
right. And I don't know, I guess that would be it. It's just that, I hope that they understand that I have no ill intentions. I don't need anything from them. I'm just there to have a conversation. I feel like a lot of people's lives, especially if they went through something traumatic or whatever, I feel like their lives are kind of hidden. They're brushed under the rug because we don't talk about bad things that happened in the past, and I hate that. If I went through something, I wouldn't want people to discredit it just because it made people feel uncomfortable. So I just want them to know that I'll listen to their story for as long as they want to talk about it.
That's awesome. That's so cool. Well, I want to thank you for coming on our
Yeah,
podcast
this was
tonight.
fun. This went so fast.
It really did.
Yeah.
But I really want to thank you from Anthony and I being the first guest we've had in quite a long
Yay.
time. We don't really do guests anymore. But I feel when Halloween season
Yeah.
or maybe,
And I'm an expert on the
you
paranormal.
go.
They got to bring me in.
I feel that we need to bring someone in who also has knowledge and has her own podcast
Yeah.
and is versed in this world. And it was an absolute pleasure to meet you, to hear your stories, and to just experience the stories that you've told us. You really have a gift for getting that out there, and it was just such a pleasure to sit here and be able to hear this.
Thank you.
So, Denise, tell the people where they can find you on the internet.
I have a paranormal podcast on Thursday nights called the Cryptic Paranormal Show. I also am a volunteer at Madison Seminary. We do tons of events there. We have flashlight tours, which are self-guided tours, and you can do investigations during that. We have public hunts, and we have private hunts where you can rent the whole building to yourself and just be you and your friends in the building.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a definite. If you guys get a chance to go to any haunted location, actually, just go, because know that, as the owner says, he uses the paranormal to pay for the historical. So we take the money from these investigations and these flashlight tours and we put them back into these buildings. They're a lot to maintain. They're beautiful, but when you have something that's built in 1847, it takes a lot of maintenance. So you're also being a historical preservationist when you do these investigations, and it's very much appreciated.
That's awesome. Well, Denise, we had your the Cryptic Paranormal Show Facebook page up there. So if you guys head on over to Facebook, look up the Cryptic Paranormal Show with Heisenberg, the Goose, and D Nice.
D Nice.
As she said, it's on Thursdays.
Yep.
So check it out. Check her out at the Madison Seminary. And you can check us out every Monday at 7:30 when we go live to give you guys the live unfiltered takes that you are craving. So, hey, you guys have all made the cut. I'm Tom Roth. I was joined by the wonderful Denise Smith tonight. And a special thank you to the producer of the show, the guy who makes everything go, the guy who made this dream a reality, Anthony Aquendo. You guys have a great night. We'll see you next week when we kick off the politics season of the cut, because we got a fucking election coming up.
Which is scarier than ghosts.
Scarier than ghosts. You're right. And I can't wait to see you guys. So we'll see you next Monday on the cut. Have a great